Sleeping in a medieval castle during winter was far from the romantic image people imagine today. Instead of cozy stone halls and crackling fires bringing comfort through the cold months, winter nights in a castle, the thick stone walls that made castles strong against enemies also turned them into icy traps once the temperature dropped. Stone absorbed cold all day and released it slowly at night, meaning rooms never truly warmed up. Even with fires burning, the chill crept in from every surface, seeping into bones and refusing to leave until spring arrived. Heating was one of the biggest problems. Fireplaces were large but inefficient, and they were usually placed only in the most important rooms, such as the Great Hall or the Lord's Chamber. Smaller rooms, corridors, and sleeping quarters were often left unheated. Even where fireplaces existed, they consumed enormous amounts of wood and produced more smoke than warmth. Chimneys were poorly designed, so smoke frequently blew back into the room, stinging eyes and lungs. Fires had to be carefully managed, and at night they were often allowed to die down for safety, leaving sleepers shivering in darkness. Beds themselves offered little comfort. Mattresses were usually sacks stuffed with straw, hay, or feathers, materials that flattened quickly and provided minimal insulation from the cold. The bed frames were wooden, sometimes rotting or warped from dampness. Sheets and blankets were made of wool or rough linen, which could be scratchy and thin. Only the wealthiest nobles had multiple layers of blankets or fur covers, and even those were not always clean or well maintained. Servants and soldiers often slept on the floor or on simple pallets, exposed to freezing drafts that swept through the halls. Drafts were constant and unavoidable. Castles were designed for defense, not comfort, and many had arrow slits, poorly fitted doors, and thin wooden shutters that allowed cold air to rush inside. Windows, if present at all, were small and usually covered with oiled cloth, parchment, or thin horn instead of glass. These coverings did little to block the cold. At night, icy winds howled through cracks in the walls, making sleep difficult and restless. Even heavy tapestries, which were hung to add insulation, could not fully stop the cold air from moving freely. Dampness made winter even worse. Rain, snow, and melting ice often seeped into the stone walls, creating a cold, wet environment. Floors were commonly made of stone or packed earth, both of which stayed cold and damp throughout the winter. Straw was sometimes spread on the floor for warmth, but it quickly became dirty, wet, and foul-smelling. Moisture encouraged mold and mildew, which damaged clothing, bedding, and furniture and contributed to respiratory problems among those living in the castle. Hygiene suffered badly during winter. Bathing was rare because heating water required time, fuel, and effort, and many people believed that washing too often weakened the body. Instead, dirt and sweat built up over months, attracting lice, fleas, and other parasites. Bedding was often infested, making nights itchy and uncomfortable. In winter, people wore the same layers day and night to conserve warmth, which made cleanliness even harder to maintain. The smell inside sleeping quarters could be overwhelming, especially in rooms shared by multiple people. Nighttime routines offered little relief. Candles and oil lamps provided weak light and were expensive, so darkness came early. Once the fire died down, temperatures dropped quickly. People slept in their clothes, often wearing hats, cloaks, and even gloves to stay warm. Some slept with hot stones or heated bricks wrapped in cloth, but these cooled quickly and could cause burns if mishandled. Others relied on body heat, with entire families or groups of servants sleeping together in one room, sacrificing privacy for warmth. Noise made sleeping difficult as well. Castles were never truly quiet. Winter storms rattled doors and shutters, while wind whistled through corridors. Inside, animals such as dogs, cats, and even chickens were sometimes kept indoors for warmth, adding to the noise and mess. Guards patrolled the walls at all hours, their footsteps echoing through stone passageways. In shared sleeping areas, coughing, snoring, and shifting bodies disrupted any chance of deep rest. Health problems were common during winter nights. Prolonged exposure to cold weakened immune systems, making people more vulnerable to illnesses such as pneumonia, bronchitis, and fevers. Poor ventilation from closed shutters and smoky fires worsened breathing problems. Damp bedding and clothing contributed to joint pain and chronic aches. Without modern medicine, even minor illnesses could become serious, and long cold nights made recovery difficult. Even nobles were not spared from winter misery. While they enjoyed larger rooms, better bedding, and access to fireplaces, they still lived in cold, drafty spaces. Their chambers were often high up in towers, where winds were strongest and temperatures lowest. Servants slept nearby to attend fires and provide assistance, but this also meant constant movement and noise. Luxury items like fur-lined cloaks and heavy curtains helped slightly, but they could not overcome the fundamental problem of living in a stone fortress during winter. Psychological strain added another layer of discomfort. Long winter nights, limited daylight, and constant cold affected mood and sleep patterns. People went to bed early because there was little to do in the dark, but lying awake in the cold made time drag painfully slowly. Anxiety about food supplies, illness, and potential attacks did not disappear just because it was winter. In fact, shortages were more common during cold months, adding stress to already difficult conditions. Compared to modern standards, medieval castle sleeping conditions were harsh and unforgiving. There was no central heating, no insulation, no electric light, and no way to fully escape the cold once winter set in. Every night required endurance, layered clothing, and a willingness to accept discomfort as a normal part of life. What we now see as majestic and picturesque was, in reality, a place where winter sleep was shallow, restless, and often miserable. So while castles may look enchanting in snowy landscapes, the reality of sleeping inside one during winter was anything but magical. Boo. Cold stone walls, drafty rooms, smoky fires, damp floors, poor bedding, and constant noise combined to make winter nights long and uncomfortable. For the people who lived there, surviving winter was less about enjoying warmth and more about enduring the cold until spring finally returned.